Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another historic Shropshire church. This is the church of St. Callixtus, Astley Abbots, just outside Bridgnorth. It's dedicated to St. Callixtus, which is an unusual dedication. Callixtus was Bishop of Rome 219 to 222 AD, and the very shortness of his period in office indicates that he was martyred, he was put to death for his faith. Today, of course, he's referred to as a pope, but he wouldn't have seen himself as a pope. He saw himself as the bishop, the spiritual leader of the Christian community in the city of Rome. He was a former slave, like so many in the early church. He enjoyed the reality that in Christ there is neither slave nor free. And so as we look around the building, we'll see some of the various features. It's an interesting building because of the dates. The nave was rebuilt in the 1850s, but the chancel was rebuilt in 1633 during the reign of King Charles I. The first church was Norman in the 12th century, but nothing of that survives except the font. And as we look around, we'll see these features that relate to the various periods in which the church was built, rebuilt, added to, reordered, and such like. So let's have a look around. As usual, we start at the west end, the back of the church, if you will. And here is the font. This is it's a Norman tub font, 12th century in date, the oldest thing in the building. Everything else here, furniture and so on, is later. It's a bit of a gloomy day today. I have got a light on the camera, but it's not incredibly bright. You can see here there's that 17th century pulpit, and you can see the break between the 17th century chancel and the 19th century nave. There are, I say 19th century nave, the north wall of the nave is medieval, is 12th century. You can see there a Norman window, but the south wall is Victorian, and the chancel itself is, as I've said, 17th century. There's a big organ at the back. These are almost always 19th century. There are very, very few This was rebuilt in 2020, although originally it was built in 1890 by C. Lloyd & Co., Nottingham. It's rebuilt by Cartwright & Cartwright of Slindon, Staffordshire. There is a little display case here. You can see in the middle that is a maiden's crant. It's that all too familiar, I apologise for the flickering of the light, I can't do anything about that. It's that all too familiar garland, paper garland that would be displayed at the funeral of an unmarried girl who died before her wedding. There's there a model of the church, ceramic model of the church, and Thomas Percy, D.D., Right Reverend Thomas Percy, D.D. We have the usual war memorial and the pulpit there. Got a memorial here to John Howells, 22 years parish clerk. Of course, parish clerk very important. He leads the people's side of the worship. He leads the responses. Sometimes, unfortunately, parish clerks got a bit carried away and they ended up essentially acting as if it was a duet between them and the minister. So nice big Jacobean pulpit. And we have here behind it Sir Thomas Terrett Jones, Baronet, representative in Parliament for the town of Shrewsbury, died in 1811, aged 46, buried in the Chapel Royal, Windsor. So you have some of these important high status memorials. And here we are in the 17th century chancel. You see we've got these corbels here. These appear to be Norman in fact. But above, we've got very typically 17th century roof here. In the east window is an interesting medieval survival. This is a perhaps 13th, 14th century panel believed to depict St. Callixtus. It's been patched a bit, as most of them have been over time. We have here a memorial to Captain the Honourable Hugh Turret, RN, and died at sea 1907, buried in the Mediterranean. Looking west, you've got the organ at the back. Now, because of the rebuild and other things, this is quite a broad church, and there's, as you can see, there's very little in the way of division between nave and chancel, and nothing at all on the south side. Little modern piano there. Good idea. Mothers' Union. The Mothers' Union, of course, is an organisation to support mothers, and it's very much a Church of England organisation. Most parishes used to have them. Some still do, but as with so many of these institutions, it's decayed over time. There's a really nice chandelier there. So you've got your usual memorials. You've got some remains of some old panelling, quite possibly remains of old box pews. Most of the seating has been renewed in the 19th century, and is the bog standard pews. And of course you've got your standard choir stalls here. So it's a relatively simple building. Got the Royal Arms there under the tower. Lighting is not very good under the tower, although it is in the nave, as you can see, and in the chancel, because the two run into one, really. So it's an interesting little building, and one of the very few places where you've got a significant 17th century element of the structure surviving, because very often the Victorians went, well, we don't like these 17th century buildings, they're not Gothic-y enough, and so they would just destroy them and rebuild. But here, now they've gone, we need to rebuild the nave. No doubt the nave was in a poor condition, but the chancel has been retained. The other thing, of course, is nave and chancel were normally done by other people, by different people. The rector would have responsibility for the nave, and the people, and the diocese, it's the other way around. The rector has the chancel, the people, the diocese, the parish, the nave. Another old memorial here. Can't read it in this light, but there we are. That's inside here at Astley Abbots, and this reminds me with Callixtus of the early church and the sufferings and the martyrdoms. And also it's important that we don't identify the fact that he's a Bishop of Rome doesn't mean that he's a pope like Pope Francis or anyone like that. So there we are, back to the chancel and the window with Callixtus in it. And so here we are outside Astley Abbots. You can see the building behind me, the contrast between the 17th century chancel and the 19th century stonework on the south side of the nave. It is raining. I mean, this is England. Autumn seems to have come a bit early to us here. I think the Mediterranean has our hot weather as well as its own at the moment, which is painful Mediterranean and, well, a bit miserable for us. But this is England. We cope with the rain. So we'll have a look around the outside and point out the usual salient features. So there we go, there's that lovely local rubble sandstone chancel, and there's a big, you can see above the east window there is a carving that says Anno 1633. So we know the date because it's written on the building. And although the windows have been somewhat renewed in the 19th century, we've still got the surrounds art, partially 17th century, and this is a Norman doorway that's been recycled and reset, left with good work done on it. You can see these Norman heads, and those heads too are not 19th century. They kind contrast very much, of course, with these windows. This is 1850s, 1857, I believe, and there's a perpendicular thing, like a funny little tower that's spire thing on. Nice big porch. Of course, by the 19th century, porch is just going in and out, but it's nice to have somewhere to flick an umbrella off or something. Again, we've got these. This is very Victorian bit of the church. Undoubtedly a necessary restoration because they kept the north wall. You can see here this isn't a full tower because it's got this belfry with extras. And round we go. Be careful of the wet grass, of course. Always be aware of the surroundings. And here we've got nice ashlar masonry, Victorian stonework. We come around here and suddenly we've got Norman. Forgotten this it existed, but the nice Norman window there. Buttresses are later. Of course, buttresses have a very definite reason for existing. You can see the doorway, although it's obvious on the inside, the north doorway has just been completely blocked off on the outside. There's two nice Norman windows, and the stonework here is very, very different from the south side because it's normal stonework. Then we have the 17th century stonework of the chancel, which is a rebuild. This is a period that not a lot of churches built or rebuilt and survived in the period. It's been referred to as a Gothic survival. That is to say, it's the continuation of the medieval English pointed style, and it eventually merges with and becomes a much more rounded style, and eventually then the neoclassical comes in, and then in the 19th century it's back to the Gothic once more. So that's the outside of St. Callixtus, Astley Abbots. The village name, of course, Astley Abbots, is to distinguish it from all the other Astleys there are out there, and Abbots means it belonged to the abbey, or to the abbot, rather, of a particular abbey. Most likely in this area, there's a number of abbeys around here, but belonged to one of the abbots, and it would have, basically the tithes would have gone to him, and then, of course, the Reformation, the abbeys are abolished, and they're taken over by various individuals. Some go to the crown, some go to organisations. Many are bought up by private individuals, rich people, who then have the right to appoint the minister. But this is Astley Abbots. It's Norman, 17th century, and then 19th century. Three very distinct periods in English architectural history. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.